So welcome everyone on this, well, it's certainly in Holland, very cold, as you can see by the amount of clothes I've got on. Grey and drizzly weather, so I'm happy to have some Irish sunshine here with Eileen. So welcome to everyone to today's IPC&M CPD Building Masterclass. My name is Julie Kennedy, and I am your host from The Hague in the Netherlands. And today we welcome Advanced Holistic Mindset Coach, Holistic Lifestyle Coach, and Accredited Fellow level by the IPC&M, and wonderful woman, I must add, not just status here, Eileen McCotter. So it'll be a game for all of you to see if you can spot any of her Irishisms. Maybe you can point them out to us. Great topic as usual, and so very important to all of us. How to find the story under the story, basically how to hear what your clients are actually saying. So as always, our call will be a maximum of 1 hour, and that's 45 minutes content and then questions. Eileen, how would you like it? Would you like the questions as we go along, or just the burning ones and we put the rest in the comment box?
Yeah, I like it to be organic, let people unmute, talk at any time.
Right,
Certainly,
so there we are. You got
yeah.
that. So if you have a question or clarification or comment or whatsoever, just, raise your hand or unmute yourself. The session is recorded, so please mute yourself for the quality of those listening on replay or via Facebook Live, but it would be great if you could keep your video on. And of course, have your pens and your CPD pads ready so that we can at least write down the main points so that we can remember to actually take action on them. I think a lot of us, we make copious notes and we think how incredible this was, how enriching, and then it stays in a notepad, and that is a shame. So Eileen, enough from me and all over to you.
Good. Oh, thank you. And you're such a great host and a great introduction. I really do appreciate it. And thank you guys for being here. Those who are able to make it live today, and those that are going to catch up on the recording. It's so good to be here. I was only here a while ago, wasn't I? I'm here again. It feels like it's gone like that. So also I can see some of my coaches that have trained with me have also jumped on. So nice to see you. You know who you are. So first of all, can I get you all to type in the chat box, because this will really help me in terms of how much to share or what not to share. Are you already trained as a coach? Do you have clients? Are you growing your program, your coaching program? Just let me know, where are you? Yeah. That would be really, really helpful if you could. If you could let us know that, that would be great. So where are you right now in terms of, hi Gilly, good to have you here. So are you fully trained? Have you got clients? Thank you. Someone's at the beginning of their coaching journey from New York City. I've just got off with a client from New York. Love the amount. Been coaching. Someone's been here coaching for a long time. Old timer like me then, Dina. Yeah, brilliant. 7 p.m. Thank you for turning up in the even. Mumbina, hopefully I've said your name correctly. Trained in coaching for 3 years. Thank you, Floss. Fantastic. So yeah. Colleen, still a student, Dorset, love it. Coaching for 6 years, brilliant. This really helps. So we have quite a lot of expertise on this coaching call today, and I certainly do not want to discredit or dismiss the experience that you have. I'm here just today sharing the experience that I've had for a coach. As a coach, I have a coaching practice, been coaching for a long time. I don't know if it's 13, 14 or 15 years. It's been a long time. And then I've been running the holistic coaching school for over 10 years. And some of my coaches are on, Katie, Colleen and Gilly. Lovely to have you here. So this is what I've learned. How can we listen to what a client is saying and then also hear what they might not be saying? And I think that's an art within itself. How can we listen to what a client is saying and then listen to what they're not saying? Yeah. And for me, I call that, how can we find the story under the story? So this was in fact a 2-day long workshop that I have the task of trying to squeeze into 60 minutes. Yeah. So if any of you want the full version of this webinar, you can email us in at the Holistic Coaching School. Just email us eileen@holisticcoachingschool.com. Say that you're here today or you're listening to the recording, and we will send you the webinar complimentary, yeah, as part of being part of the federation. So how to find the story into the story. So a little overview. We're going to look at the purpose of stories, the hidden patterns of stories, and how we can find the story under the story. And I'm going to spend most of our time today on point 3, yeah, of this webinar. So we want to delve beneath the surface level of stories that can really support you as a coach to really help a client to get to have an experience, to have a shift. Ultimately, clients come to us because they are stuck. There is something they cannot solve themselves, and therefore they want solutions in to be able to solve that for themselves. And we want to listen to their story. And I use the words ego, you might say mind or something else. How does part of their ego grip so tightly to the story that then they block themselves from change, long-lasting change? And for me, that's our job as a coach, to listen to what they're not saying. Yeah. So firstly, the purpose of the story. A client is going to come to you and they're going to say, you know, I don't get on with one of my parents because my parent is like this, this, and this, and this. Yeah. Or they'll go, I've had this awful relationship. And that story is kind of turns into our behaviors and our habits. So stories are deeply ingrained in human life. They fulfill a multitude of roles that echo our natural urge to communicate, establish connections, and find meanings. So we want stories. When you meet a stranger on the tube, oh, where are you from? Oh, I'm from so-and-so. And then you talk about a story. So stories are great because they can connect us together. Yeah. And we want to listen to client stories. So I want you all now to shout out. I don't want it to be about me. What is the benefit of clients telling you their stories? Unmute. Let me hear your wonderful voices from all over. Come on, don't be shy.
You get an idea of where they're at the current time, and what they're dealing with.
Absolutely. You get an idea of where they're at. Phenomenal. Thank you. Anyone else?
Mobina.
Hiya, Bobina.
Yes. Hi, thank you. Yes, you pronounced my name 99% correctly. Okay. So, stories sell and data's, they don't do that much. Data's tell and stories sell. Yeah.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. So stories can sell. Yeah, absolutely. Can be great as a marketing tool, as a coach.
Yes,
but
because they connect us on a human level, because we would remember Cinderella more than, you know, a non-story thing.
Yeah, yeah, stats. I get it. Yeah, lovely. Anyone else? What's the benefit of stories?
It gives us the background, right? Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Terence.
What I found is that, you know, if you are open to the client's story and them telling their story, number one, it really builds the trust in the relationship between the coach and client, but also you can hear the gaps and what they're overlooking in their own lives, or what they've stepped over, or, you know, even forgotten, which I think is really important.
Yeah, love that. Brilliant. So again, you're sharing that they might just share part of the story, or there might be gaps in some of those story that could be the wisdom, could be the magic on how you can help them to help themselves. Love that. So benefits to stories. Here's just builds connection. You've shared, provides education and learning, power to inspire, motivate, and influence. Let me just look at it. Source of entertainment and escapism. Great form of emotional release. That's what's great as a coach, for us to hold space and to listen. to enhance imaginations, stimulate thinking, and to make meaning of the past, the present, and the future. So that's a great thing about listening to stories. Yeah. So this is a little exercise that we're not going to go through today, but this is an exercise I give to my clients or to people trained to be a coach to look at stories. And this is where you want a client to share a happy story. Yeah. Because they might come with you with sad stories, but get them to share a happy story and then get them to guess how is part of this story so significant to them. And what we're trying to do right then, we're trying to get them out of the logical mind and we're trying to get them into what I call the metaphoric, yeah, the 4 levels of consciousness, which we're going to go into shortly. So there's always room for a story that can transport other people to a new place. And that's what Mabina was kind of saying, that stories transport you to another place. Yeah. So here's the second part, hidden stories. Stories serve as a lens through which we view the world. They influence our attitudes, beliefs, behaviors in a profound way. They shape our understanding of ourselves and others, guiding our interactions and decisions in every life. So again, that's kind of the positive to our stories. Yeah. But I want you now to write down, all of you, what I call as an holistic coach, we use the terminology light and shadow. You might prefer the terminology, what's the upside, what's the downside, what's the benefits, what's the consequences. I want you right now, what is the light side when a client shares a story, and what's the shadow side? Or what's the light side when you get pulled into a client's story, and what's the shadow side when you get really attached to your client's stories? You could answer it that way. So if you could all just type that in the chat box. What's the good thing about your client stories? What's the downside? Or as a coach, what's the good thing about you being attached to your client stories, and what's the shadow side? Because as coaches, we are human beings first. We are coaches second. So let's type that in the chat box and see what we've come up with. Yeah, brilliant, Colleen. The light side, that they can trust in us. Yeah, because we can validate and acknowledge. Yeah. S Green, apologies, I can't see your first name, so I'm going to call you SG. Where's that gone? Yeah, you can get wrapped up with the emotions. Absolutely. That can be the light and the shadow. You could get, and when I started on my coaching journey, there was a part of me that got really pulled into the client's story. And when, especially when someone was very dominant with their story, I would get pulled into it. So it can have a light and shadow side. The shadow side, feeling that we have to fix it. As coaches, we can feel we've got to get a client an outcome and we have to change that story for them. Spot on. Emily, thank you. We discover something new. It will build rapport. Oh, thank you, Sarah. The light side, it can bring out aliveness of a client. The shadow can come up against your own stories. Yeah, there can be a transference. They can share a story and that triggers part of you. Love that. You can get drawn into not seeing the full picture. Thank you, Isabel. You can work with them. For me, showing them they can do it despite disabilities. Yeah. Thank you, Emily. We can get stuck in their story. Absolutely. Thank you, Julie. We can affirm their experience before diving deeper to what that represents. Thank you, Colette. It can build connection, happiness versus hurt and bitterness. And we could get stuck in the loop. And for Katie, we can relate and share from experience to help them reframe their experience. Brilliant wisdom, team. Thank you for that. So just to add on, the light side, it inspires us to overcome obstacles. That's the great thing about storytelling. It can expand our knowledge and challenge our perspectives. It can encourage us to connect on a deeper level. And it's our ability to break habitual patterns. to align with our new values. So I've just done 2 new calls with new potential clients today, and they were deeply in their stories. And I had to say, okay, so you're saying that part of you wants this, but another part of you is kind of telling yourself this story. So what do you want to do with this? This is where we have to help a client where they might not be able to see. In order for them to progress or change, they're going to have to tweak that story. But part of them will feel disloyal doing that. And that's what I find most coaches do not help their clients with, that feeling of feeling disloyal. The shadow side, stories can reinforce prejudice, biases, and behaviours. So we want to listen to the story in a literal sense. Yeah. It can be unrealistic expectations, can build feelings of inadequacy. It can repeat what is familiar. So the story can go into punishment patterns. Yeah. Blame and shame patterns. My story is right, their story is wrong. And it can impede our ability to adapt and embrace new opportunities. So as a coach, we have to kind of share this with our clients. Thank you for that story. What's the benefit to that? And what if that story, what's the downside of you clinging to that story? So this is what I like to ask a client when they share a story. What if that story is only half true? What if that story is only half true? Straight away, then they're creating space in a part of their brain. And that's not you dismissing their story. That's not you trying to change their story. But what if that story is only half true? Yeah. Colleen, could I pull you up for a minute and you can tell me to get lost if need be?
Go on then. What are you asking me?
Guess what, Colleen? We don't even have to go into your story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that okay?
Mm.
So when Colleen came to me many years ago, Colleen came with a story.
I
So,
did.
Colleen, from your point of view, what happened to that story?
I changed it. I changed the narrative of it.
And what helped you with that?
Oh, what helped me with that was to find, I want to say forgiveness, but it didn't start with forgiveness. It started with understanding someone else's point of view, potentially. The what if question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a coach, that's when held space, listened to the story, but I was listening to how a part of her was so literally attached to that story to form an identity, and then from that to have these behaviors and habits, to then in a compassionate and challenging way. And as a coach, how can we be, and this is a question to all of us without an answer, it's an open question, how can we be compassionate and challenging? And I've got to be honest, when I started coaching, I wasn't challenging. I was like, oh, they'd better like me because that was my story. Oh, I better overgive because then they'll really like me. Or if I give them so many things, then I can, I can put my prices up. That was all my stories. But actually, and thank you, Colleen, because can we say I challenged you a little bit?
Yeah, it's all good. I'm used to that now after 6 years. Kind of.
that.
Part of me.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
You're
So we want to
welcome.
look at and say to a client too, great, what is great about the story that you shared? What is great for a part of you. And what's the downside to part of you, you know, repeating that story, saying it out loud, telling other people? Yeah, I would have a story. Oh, you know what? You know, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic, I'm one of 7. That story has a lot of beauty and wisdom in it. For me also, it carried quite a lot of limitations. Yeah, it carried an awful lot of loyalty, which is, oh, I'm one of 7. I had to go without. Oh, I'm one of 7. Be grateful for what you've got. It was all these like hidden limitations within that very story. So thank you for that. So, and I like to zip things into short for people. So the lighter side of stories, they can build connection. They can be ultra inspiring and ultra affirming. Yeah. And I want you right now to think about a story you have in your life. And you go, that story really inspires and affirms me. Yeah. Just going to give you all a little exercise now. Just reading the room right now. Think about a story in your life that you go, God, when I think about that, that inspires and affirms me. Then I'd like you to flip over to another story. And by the way, you're not going to share these because this is about a personal space. Yeah. That's why even with Colleen, I said, hey, we don't have to go into the story. This is recorded. This is placed on YouTube. This is a personal space. I'm not going to pull any of you out. Yeah. But you can just write in your own notepad. Yeah. What is a story that you share about your life often that's very inspiring and affirming? I heard from Julie, from the, from the Netherlands. I could hear from her tonality, my experience of that awesomeness and the connection that part of her has to that. Now I want you to write down, what story do you carry around in your life that it has more of an emotional attachment, that carries shame and fear, that carries, you could say, negativity, that carries limiting beliefs. That part of you is still feeding today in some way. I'll be open with mine. One of my stories is my parents are Irish. Absolutely love it. I've got a place in Ireland. I love going to Ireland. I love potatoes. You cannot take a potato off me. Yeah, that's my story. It's connection. Yeah. Another story, attachment, is that I have, I want to be liked. I need to be liked. I want people to like me. That actually can limit my growth as an individual and also a coach. And there's lots of stories around that. I've got to be compliant. I've got to be the good girl. So that's just a little something for yourself. Does anyone want to share, without going into your personal story, what have you noticed so far, if anything, from what we've shared? I love to hear other people's voices rather than my own.
Eileen, I'd be willing to share one thing that I'm noticing, which is actually somewhat of a pleasant surprise, is that even in the negative story, the one about limitation and attachment, I'm finding that just by merit of your having shared yours, I can relate mine to that. And by your vulnerability and openness, it actually helps me feel connected. So it seems like it can feed back into the connection in a way. I don't mind sharing my story. I live in New York City, but I'm from the South. And so my sense of connection is as a Southerner, but I also feel that carries with it certain negative connotations here in the United States and certain limitations, perhaps depending on interpretation. And part of that is exactly what you said, of being raised as like the proper Southern female, and that comes with a set of social standards. And I very much relate to what you said. So it's interesting that that negativity can actually, when used in a positive sense, lead back to connection.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for that, Sarah. And absolutely. And that's, again, as coaches, we want to be both the student and the teacher, where we can share a level of vulnerability. So it does then help another person not go into competing and comparing with the coach. So yeah, thank you for that, Sarah. Really appreciate your vulnerability too, and your stories. So stories are great, but they also can bring all of these behaviors and habits around them, where we then go, oh, how come I didn't get the goal? How come I'm not getting more clients? How come I'm not getting whatever it is that we want for ourselves? So in short, the light and shadow builds connection. They can be inspiring and affirming, or they can create where we devalue ourselves or we feel unsafe. Yeah. We don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Yeah, at any time. And that's where your client's going to be. They're going to see things, you know, kind of as they are, you know, as they are. So holistic concepts around stories. I'm not going to go into all of these just for the purpose. In fact, no, I am. I'm going to ignore what I just said because I'm like, absolutely. So we want to listen to the message of the story and how the story is told. And again, many of you on here have been coaching a long time, but I always believe we need to be reminded of this stuff. Yeah. We want to listen to the tonality. We want to listen to the space between the words. I could hear in Sarah, doesn't make it true, Southerner. She went animated. I'm a Southerner. I've been brought up like a Southerner. I could hear a lot of loyalty around what that means to a part of her. Yeah. How stories are used to control the illusion of the rescuer, the victim, the punisher, or the hero. So we're looking at these archetypal behaviors that pop in within our stories. Yeah. We want to look at, oh, dearie might press the wrong button there. The chance to hear the message in front of the curtain, to understand the message behind the curtain. So an example, a client last week came to me going, Eileen, I want to look at this. I want to look at this. I went, great. Explored, shared, and then it really was about something else. Now, the human psyche ego doesn't want to look behind the curtain, but that's where the magic and the wisdom is. And I have 3 of the people that trained with me on here, Jilly, Katie, Colleen. They're out there doing phenomenal work with their own gifts and skills and holistic coaching. Beautiful females where we really support and shout and cheer for one another. And it's just going behind the curtain can really help the client if we do it in a compassionate, challenging way. How unrealized stories become the magic carpet to new realities. And that's what I found fundamental. Stories become the magic carpet to new realities. And I think someone was sharing that on here, when there's gaps with what the clients don't share, pulling out that story is the magic carpet. We want to listen to literal stories, hide the metaphoric, paradoxical, and creative realms of reality. And this is what I'm going to share with you next, a little tool that the coaches that train with me, that we use as a little template. So let's say what's going on in the chat box, if anything. Are we all good? Oh, you like the magic carpet? Absolutely. Yes, amazed at how all the comment resonates. Yeah, thank you for that, Colette. Yeah, and I remember that magic carpet. Love to share that with a client as well. So there's a pattern of stories. And again, I'm going to go through this very, very quickly. So stories can create limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. Every human being, my experience in the last 15 years, feels not good enough in some way. If it's not, doesn't show up in their business life, it will show up in their love life. If it doesn't show up in their love life, it will show up in their health and confidence with self. Yeah. So past stories reinforce those beliefs. Then we have repetitive patterns. So those past experience form patterns that we unconsciously repeat. Yeah. So I could hear in Sarah doesn't make it true, that part of us going, I feel like I don't belong. But what if part of her has always felt that in some way? By the way, for me, that's true for all of us in some way. We can then identity attachment, our stories contribute our sense of identity. Then we create all these narratives about who we think we are. And for me as a coach, this is what limits our coaching practice, is our identity, and our own stories about ourselves can limit our growth as a coach. Doesn't matter what level you go to. What do we say? New level, new devil. Emotional baggage and unresolved baggage can keep us stuck in patterns of fear, anger, and stop us from moving forward. Then we have biases. Our past stories shape how we perceive and interpret new information. We seek evidence of what we think we know. And then we have self-fulfilling prophecy, where it kind of those habits and behaviors repeat. So whenever a client's sharing a story, I'm kind of looking at where they are within that little roadmap. And again, I've gone so super fast on this, so I do apologize. However, you can have the webinar version. Again, this is an exercise which I'm not going to go through in this time. The important thing is communication. It's hearing what isn't said. Yeah. And I think that's a skill and an art. Some coaches just innately have that because you had that as a child. You were able in your home to see what was going on, but you could hear and feel something very different. And that's probably what's led you towards being a coach, for example. Yeah. Or it's a skill that you just want to continue to perfect, hearing what isn't said, and then saying to a client, thank you for sharing that story. Can I share what I heard? And it'll be something totally different. So the third thing, finding the story into the story. So as coaches, we acknowledge what's being said and we hear what's not being said. And all the time, we should have our ears and our heart open to that. What are they sharing? What are they not saying? Yeah. And what is the full picture that one of you said on here? So together we explore how these stories serve a purpose and to maintain a sense of control. The ego is about making us feel safe, while also masking deeper feelings of feeling devalued or not feeling safe. Yeah. Through this process, clients can develop greater self-awareness, compassion for themselves, paving the way for growth and healing. So, how to listen to a story? Yeah. For me, there's 4 steps. The point A is where your client is, and they're coming to you because they want to get to their point B. So it may be their point A. I'm having a challenging relationship with my colleagues at work. Great. Where would you like to be? Point B. I would like to feel like I belong in work. I'd like to get on with my clients at work. Yeah. It could be point A. I'm earning £3,000 as a business owner per month, and I would like to go to point B, 10,000 per month. So we want to listen to the story then that they have about why can they not go from point A to point B. And that's often they will have a literal story. Yeah. And that's the first story you often hear from a client. Yeah. well, I want this, it's because of this is where I am, this is what I've done, etc. Yeah. And this is the first level of consciousness, yeah, where most clients reside. The second level is metaphoric. So as a coach, we want to take them from their literal story to what that means to them, yeah. So can I ask, the story you've just shared, what does that mean to a part of you? What does that story represent to you? What does that story represent to your family? What does that story represent to your culture, your community? You can take it wider and wider. Then you want to go to the challenging part. And I find, my experience doesn't make it true, many coaches do level 1 and 2 and possibly do not go to level 3. And that was me, my hands up, because I wanted my clients to like me. So I didn't want to challenge. Yeah. This is the paradoxical level. How does part of you benefit from that story? And what are the consequences of you continually believing that story? And if we do not help a client there, and here we want to spend quite a lot of time here, then we cannot go to the creative realm, which is a higher level of consciousness where we can create a new story. Because part of them will never let go of the literal story. And it pees me off, I'm going to get passionate here, that coaches are trying to get clients to get rid of their stories. No, because part of them needs that story, yeah, because it gives them an element of safety. But what's the consequence if all of them holds on to that story? And then we can create a new story. So 2 stories dance together at the same time. So I shared quite a lot then. Yeah. So I want to put this across to you guys now. Have you guys got any questions or any feedback from what I've just shared? Let's come over to you guys. Would anyone like to share? What have you got from listening to that? If anything, it may be, oh, I do that. I feel good right now. It could be, oh, I can see that. Who would like to share? Let me see if I can get back to seeing your lovely faces. Let me come back to you guys a bit. Has anyone got any shares?
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon from me. I'm connecting from Athens, Greece, and thank you very much for this inspiring presentation. I would like to ask one more time about the paradoxical level of the story. As I understand, you are meaning to challenge the client, the coachee, as to think why does he need this part of the story? What is the benefit she acquires from this part of the from this story?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely spot on. So that's when you go, okay, how does, and I would kind of take it off them and kind of go, how does part of your brain benefit from believing that story, from repeating that story, by sharing that story? And what are the consequences to the part of you continually believing all of that story? So I'm looking at the benefits and the consequences. Now for the benefit, this is when clients can be blindsided they can't see the benefit if the story is negative. So if they come to you and they say, I was bullied at school, yeah, and you go, well, what's the benefit of you believing that story? They'll be like, there's no benefit. Like, I was bullied at school. Yeah, so they don't want to let go of that story. Yeah, so I'll go, okay, so what if there's a benefit to you believing that story to be 100% true? And that's when we can then get them to look at the ego wants to hold on to that story because the story keeps them safe. The story will keep them in the victim, the punisher, or the rescuer archetype. And from that will be a certain level of behaviors and habits that they will have, if that makes sense. Because from our stories, especially our more negative stories, becomes a lot of behaviors and habits that we dislike. Yeah. So yeah, is that helped clarify things a bit more?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're so welcome. And I loved your story when you went up from Athens, Greece, yeah, to a part of you. And this is me only guessing, to a part of you that's important to a part of you. Thank you.
There's some comments
you
as well.
very
I
much.
don't know if you saw.
Oh yeah, let me look at these comments. Understand the concept, but the original story always remains. It will not constantly surface from time to time. But if the original story always remains, will it not constantly surface from time to time? Yes, absolutely. The original story wants to be there. And that's why we want, for part of us, to accept the story. We don't have to get rid of the story. And I find that many coaches are trying to get rid of people's stories. Just rewrite a new one. No, part of your ego, your brain, will want to hold on to the story because from that has become your habits, behaviors, and identity for a certain amount of time. But then how can we accept part of the story, then look at the consequences if we always just keep repeating the story in the same way? Thank you for that, Colette. Interesting that we tried to go through the story to fix or help the person. Yes, Isabel. And actually, Isabel, that says to me more about the coach. Many coaches thinks it's their job to fix the person and change the story rather than no. As a holistic coach, my mantra with the wonderful people I get to coach is our job is to help clients to help themselves. We provide the tools. It's for them to work on putting themselves back together in their way. But yeah, well said, Isabel. Good to be reminded to need to hear, and then we weave the story into the new story. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Colette. Thank you for that, Colleen. If you let go of the story completely, then you're letting go of part of yourself. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And our identity has a certain amount of loyalty. It's how can we help the client move from loyal stories into respectful stories? So yeah, thank you for that. Good. So let's go back to, and you know, I normally would model this and take someone through a story and showcase this. However, because it's recorded, I also want to be mindful that this gets passed around and I wanted it to be a private space. But normally I would take somebody through this in a closed community. So you could kind of learn this from where I'm coming from, if that makes sense. From theory into application. So how to help a client move beyond their story. So here's a little application for coaches. Number one is to listen to and acknowledge the story being shared. And that's those great fundamental coaching skills. Thank you for sharing your story. I can see that was important for you. But that is when we can also ask, can I ask, you know, to what part of you is that story really significant? Yeah. So we listen to the literal. Then we go to the metaphoric. We want to explore what the story means to them and the hidden message within the story. So we're looking for the meaning within that, and we're looking intuitively, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. As holistic coaches, we look across the 5 realms, and that's what IMESP stands for. Intuitively, how does this story get in the way of their intuition? How does this story expand their intuition? How does this story mentally help them to problem solve? How does this story stop them from being able to problem solve? Emotionally, how does this story affect them emotionally, where they feel hurt and frozen or stuck or overwhelmed? How does this story help them to regulate and manage their own emotions? Spiritually, how does this story help them to connect to other people and to something bigger than self? Or how does this story make them go inward and not trust themselves and others? Physically, how does a story help you physically, energetically? Yeah. How does this story physically help you financially? How does a story physically, financially hinder you? So that's the metaphoric realm. The paradoxical realm, how does any story serve them, and how does it hinder their growth and healing? And then the 4th realm, the creative realm, what new story could you create that could work alongside that story? And what conscious attachments can you identify to? So how could you consciously help bring that story to life? So we're looking at being then creative with the client. So that's kind of a little 4-step process. And this is just questions that I go through on a deeper level when I do training for coaches. So stories are the threads that weave the fabric of human existence, connecting us across time and space, illuminating our past, shaping our present, and inspiring our future. So guys, thank you for listening. If you wish to join us, you can join us on our Instagram page at holisticcoaching.school on Instagram. I also have a page called Coaching with Eileen. That's my personal professional coaching. And
Do you have these on a slide, Eileen, or are you just
this is on the
saying them?
slide, yeah.
Because you're not sharing anymore.
Oh, aren't I? Sorry.
No.
I do apologize. I thought I was. Oh, did I not share that last slide? Do you know what? I'm going to read. Apologies there. I want to show you that in isn't it good to be human, hey? Let me just go back to that. Apologies, I wanted to show you in this step slide. That was a lot of information. Here we go. So literal, metaphoric, paradoxical, and creative. So can we listen to the story, listen across the metaphoric, using IMESP, the 5 different ways, the paradoxical, the benefit and the consequences, and the creative. Their questions, and then that was a quote that I shared. So you can follow us on Instagram at Holistic Coaching School or Coaching with Eileen. And if you wish to get the full version of this very speedy webinar, then you can message us in at eileen@holisticcoachingschool.com. The stories we tell ourselves shape our perception, beliefs, and actions. Can we choose our stories wisely, for they become our reality? And also, can we accept and work with all stories? That's what I'd like to add. So if any of you got any questions or shares at this time?
Wow, that was a lot and very deep and very wise. I think there's lots of stories. I mean, I certainly had enough light bulbs going off there about certain stories that I do tell myself. And I'm actually looking forward to weaving a parallel story. I don't know if I'll manage that alone. I think it's always good when you have someone, right, to ask you the questions and to hold that safe space when you move out, which is the benefit of having a coach, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't need that. Would you mind putting links in chat? Okay, so that's done. Anybody have anything to ask? We have another 10 minutes, and Eileen is here and is very generous with sharing all her wisdom. So does anybody have a comment or a question that they would like to put? Don't be shy. No, no questions at all. Anything you would like to add, Eileen?
No, just thank you guys for listening in. And there's a lot of information there. Many of you are already coaching and out there doing some phenomenal work. And it's also, I think, good to look at our own stories with where we are in our profession and to be the student and remain in the student energy. So thank you. Big respect to all of you giving time to your own learning today. So that then we can be out there holding space for other people and helping them to help themselves. So I think that in true helps us stay in the coaching game for the long haul. We're not here to fix, save, change, get rid of people's stories. We're here to help them to accept how does that story benefit a part of them and what's the consequence if they continually feed that story inwardly or outwardly.
I would like to thank you for that insight, actually, because I think we do try very hard and rewrite entirely the story. Whereas then it's really, it's swimming against the flow, isn't it? I mean, there is a part in there which is important to us, which is why it's also still there, but it's opening the eyes to the shadow side. So indeed, in how far it does limit us from becoming our true expression, let's say. And I like that very much. And I love the fact that you make it so clear with the 4 different steps. And we all know about stories, but somehow you make it very concrete and very practical as well. Some very practical questions and steps to take as we move forward the process, starting with our own selves. I mean, that's actually what I was thinking to myself when I wrote down, spontaneously what you were asking about the light side and the shadow side. I was a bit like, that's interesting, after having been coaching since 2007. So we're never ended. As you say, we stay eternal scholars. And thanks to people like you coming in to share your wisdom, which you do extremely generously. Thank you also for the offer of letting us access the full webinar. So thank you. And indeed, thank you to all of you for having made time to be here today, for having participated so, spontaneously and shared your stories and your insights. So all the very best to you all. I'm not even sure if we have any more in December, actually. I'm just thinking ahead. I don't think I have any more in December. So wishing you all a wonderful end of the year. Take time, I would say, to go over these notes and to really incubate, what have you taken from it and what are you going to put into practice so that it doesn't stay just knowledge, but that we actually use it to change something for ourselves, maybe first, and then for our clients. So all the very best to you all. Thank you. And Eileen, thank you to you. You are superb always.
Thank you,
All the
guys.
best. Bye, everyone.